doing our State of Space program, Space Foundation has used these gatherings to highlight the people, organizations, and issues that are shaping the space ecosystem. That story is as much about innovation as it is inspiration. After 4 decades of operations and bringing people together, we know that advocating for innovation will always lead to bettering life on Earth. Growth and opportunity have and will come from areas where we might not have anticipated. We define the space ecosystem to encompass both space exploration and space-inspired industries. Those industries driven by space innovations like healthcare, telecommunications, agriculture, manufacturing, and more. Today, there is no doubt that space innovation is essential to every critical infrastructure on Earth, which is why we must open the aperture in defining and measuring the global space ecosystem. For all of the challenges that faced us personally and professionally in 2020, there were phenomenal achievements in the global space ecosystem. First, let's highlight those in space exploration. China touched down again on the moon and brought some of it back. The US touched the comet Bennu. Japan's Hayabusa 2 brought pieces from the asteroid Ryugu back to Earth. 3 nations, the United States, the United Arab Emirates, and China, sent probes to Mars, and American astronauts returned to space from American soil on an American rocket. These are the kinds of accomplishments most people associate with space, namely astronauts and rocket ships. However, what goes up must come down, and down is down to Earth, and the remarkable advances space technologies have put forth for humanity. Today's space dividend should no longer be measured solely by national flags planted on celestial sites, but rather the positive changes and advances it brings to life back on Earth. So let's highlight those space-inspired industries. In healthcare, space innovation impacted the delivery of telemedicine, data modeling techniques, ventilators, and personal protective equipment. In the environmental arena, real-time intelligence and imagery address the conditions of our ice caps, the epic fires that raged, and other natural disasters. In transportation, GPS satellite and terrestrial networks secured our supply chains, modifying delivery routes to maximize efficiencies and deliver vital supplies. In telecommunications, video conferencing connected students, teachers, parents, educational institutions, businesses, and government agencies, which all kept education and commerce going. Innovations are what fuel the growth of the space ecosystem, and with growth, there will naturally be challenges. For example, there is a workforce shortage and skills deficit. Satisfying the needs in space and on Earth requires casting a wider net for diversity, inclusion, and education in STEM and non-STEM. There are thousands of NASA patents that are available for commercialization, but have not yet been claimed by entrepreneurs, small businesses, incubators, and accelerators. There are millions of commercial enterprises in more than 80 countries actively participating in the space ecosystem, all contributing to policies, products, and services, and thereby creating an urgency for continuous transparency and collaboration. As more people, nations, and businesses participate in the global space ecosystem, data increases exponentially while delivery platforms expand virtually. Going forward, it will be essential to ensure the accuracy and neutrality of news and information. As I just laid out for you, it is obvious that space is the critical infrastructure that every other infrastructure is dependent upon. A day without space exploration, access to space, manufacturing, supply chains, education, and our way of life. That is even more evident when you look at a global space economy of $424 billion that is forecasted to grow to over $1 trillion within the next decade. This is a truly exciting state of space with opportunities for everyone. When we started Space Foundation, Our mission was to advocate for the entire space ecosystem, both space exploration and space-inspired industries. We continually evolve our programs and services to adapt to this ever-changing environment. And while the words may change over time, our mission is steadfast: to be the preeminent advocate and gateway for lifelong education, trusted information, and seamless collaboration for all people and organizations engaging in space exploration and space-inspired industries that drive the global space ecosystem. In today's State of Space program, we are bringing you key perspectives from 5 different leaders who are shaping this expanding ecosystem. They come from diverse sectors: government, aerospace, security, finance, and international. We hope you enjoy the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tom, for those opening words. And thank you for joining us for Space Foundation's State of Space 2021 program. I'm Rich Cooper, Space Foundation's Vice President for Strategic Communications and Outreach. As Tom Zelibor shared with you, our program is going to share 5 unique perspectives from 5 distinguished leaders in the global space ecosystem. Today, you will hear from Dr. Catherine Sullivan on civil space. You will hear from Dr. Dave Kaufman of Ball Aerospace on industry. National security will be covered by General David Thompson with the U.S. Space Force. Finance and markets will be shared by Chris Quilty of Quilty Analytics, and international space with Dr. Tidiane Ouattara, space expert and African program coordinator for the African Union. Each of them has their own distinct perspective based upon what they've done, what they've seen, and where they think we need to be going. All of them are thought-provoking and will no doubt spur some debate, but those diverse perspectives are part of the spectrum and networks that are the global space ecosystem. Space means different things to each of them, as it does to you and me. But one thing we can all agree on is that space makes things happen in outer space, in orbit, and back here on Earth. And there should be room for everyone in it. Before we begin our program, a word of thanks to Dr. Dave Kaufman and Ball Aerospace for sponsoring this program. Because of their support, Space Foundation can bring content like this to you so we can all better understand the hope, growth, and opportunity that space offers us all. Here's a message from Ball Aerospace.
From the farthest reaches of the solar system to new limits of human innovation, to the limitless possibilities of our imagination. Wherever your mission takes you, we'll be there. A partner through it all. Pushing the boundaries. Doing the impossible. Always going beyond. Ball Aerospace. Let's go beyond together.
We're joined now by a true pioneer and distinguished leader in the space community, Dr. Catherine Sullivan, who was one of the first 6 women to join the NASA Astronaut Corps in 1978 and holds the distinction of being the first American woman to walk in space. Her submersible dive in the Challenger Deep of the Pacific Ocean this past June made her the first person to both orbit the planet and reach its deepest point, as well as the first woman to dive to full ocean depth. She's an astronaut, scientist, explorer, a government executive, having served as NOAA administrator, as well as a successful author. Dr. Sullivan, thank you for joining Space Foundation and our State of Space 2021 program today.
Great to be with you, Rich.
From your perspective and experience as both an astronaut, a scientist, and administrator for NOAA, how do you see the state of space in 2021 for civil space?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. So much going on. And, I think I have 2 threads shape my view here. One is sort of a Dickensian thread of it's sort of the best of times, worst of times set of tensions. And the other is my root and my passion professionally, and really the big motivation for my wanting to fly in space is all about geography and the earth sciences and the chance to understand and see the earth from space with my own eyes. And so a big part of when I think about civil space going forward has to do with looking at the earth from space. So let me just dive a little deeper into both of those. On the exciting side, we're in what a vibrant era we're living through right now. There's so many new entrants, different companies, different non-governmental entities, different nations getting into the space business, into the space frontier, space exploration. There's new technology, new financing mechanisms coming along. So it's this wonderfully frothy, fluid kind of creative time. And the earth sciences vein, I'm particularly intrigued about the shrinking of sensors, key sensors that are really vital to our monitoring and keeping the pulse of this planet, to get synthetic aperture radar instruments down to sizes that perhaps could actually fly on CubeSats or at least smaller satellites than heretofore, that can open up so many interesting avenues for exploration, understanding, mapping, monitoring. On the other hand, I fret as an earth scientist about the continuity of some of the fundamental data streams that have become vital to our economy and to public safety. I'm not talking about images from orbit, which you can have an array of purposes and interested parties, but very esoteric measurements, profiles of the distribution of moisture and heat through the atmosphere, vertical profiles. That is the sine qua non, that's the fuel for weather forecasting and for climate outlooks. There isn't currently, and I can't imagine that someday there will be genuinely a mass market of demand for buying a column of measurements right above my head of the temperature and relative humidity as a function of height. It's been, up until this point in our history, always predominantly the province of national governments to make those measurements. And there's been a regime of national governments working together to share whatever measurements they make of the atmosphere, because no one can make as many measurements as is needed to make a good weather forecast. So that's the regime that we came into the 21st century with, and it has served the economy and our countries and our security very well. How might that change going forward? I don't know. It's certainly conceivable that there are equally good or maybe even better regimes for data acquisition or data sharing and selling going forward. But I worry about sustaining the continuity of some of those really non-marketable data streams that are vital to everyone and yet become a bit ambiguous in this new regime. We really kind of need a new regime on multiple fronts. How are you going to handle, how should new entrants behave in the space arena? Who are they? Are they accountable to anybody other than their funders? What will happen with what are now a global data commons? Will that change to a fully commercial arrangement or some mixed arrangement? I don't know any of these answers, but I know the value and importance of our ability to keep the pulse of our planet, and that the absolute centrality of space-based observing to our ability to do that. And so what I watch most carefully is in both the policy and the commercial arena is how might this be going forward? And will we find a way that we can essentially do a make before break, like a mountaineer or like an astronaut on a spacewalk, get firm hold of the next before we let go of the grip we had before? Because there's so much in the way of public safety, general well-being, and economic vitality that hinges on our ability to do that.
So with all of those challenges that you detailed, what area of civil space do you think needs the most attention and investment so it can better succeed in 2021?
Well, I would put my finger right on that question of, what is this new regime that we're making our way into? What are the principles that will guide and govern the behavior of countries, of private parties, of non-governmental entities, of a university that can put a small sat into orbit? this gets down to things like space traffic management, who's going to help deconflict, who's going to help ensure we're tracking and monitoring so we know when somebody is about to bump another person, whose obligation is it to maneuver. We may be on the verge of an era in which servicing satellites in orbit to extend their life is feasible robotically. How are we going to deal with that? If it's my satellite and something suddenly is coming close to me, what exchange of information or signals, either satellite to satellite or entity to entity, how do I know you're a good guy coming to help me and not a bad guy, maybe coming to hurt me? What will become of what has been a common data pool? I mean, a massive data lake of the most fundamental observations about the natural state of our planet. You know, that everyone from a college student to a national government to an entrepreneur with the coolest idea for a new startup company can dip into and create more value. How will that morph? Will it remain an open data commons, free sharing of the ones and zeros, and build your business, make your income on top of that? Or will we start to monetize the ones and zeros and sell or require licenses for the raw data? Spectrum is another key issue. Again, in particular for operating in and around the Earth and observing the Earth. Our atmosphere is opaque to many wavelengths and to some of the most significant wavelengths from an Earth observation and satellite control point of view. So those finite windows where you can get data and signals back and forth from the Earth to orbit, we're wrestling with a new real estate problem. Up until a few years ago, there were maybe 10 players that wanted to make use of those spectral windows. Now suddenly there are a burgeoning number of users, and all of our 5G phones potentially want to connect through space-based connectivity. How does that all interact? How do we deal with this new real estate problem of how many people want to move in and use those few fixed bits of the atmosphere that let electromagnetic radiation get through? And on this front, there's clearly also a beyond Earth dimension that's becoming quite critical, with more and more countries mounting missions to the moon, or at least stating their intentions to the moon and even to Mars. The old treaty regimes of the late 50s with their updates in the 70s, do they continue to hold? How will governments and companies proceed if they believe they're going to mine resources? Everything about ownership, access rights, usage rights, claimancy, there's a whole new domain in the beyond Earth arena that we're going to have to sort out. And it's still more than a little bit Wild West, and certainly not clear to me how that all will fall out over the next several years. But what I would say in summary of all of that is why I would put my finger first and foremost on this is what to focus on, is because everybody's prospect of success in any of the endeavors that I've touched on improves if we can get some clarity and stability and certainty around what are my obligations, what are my rules, what are my allowances. Everyone fares better on clearer ground.
I was fascinated at how you describe it as real estate. And I think that is probably one of the most apt descriptors that I think most people can really get their heads around. And with that real estate, we've now got a new administration and a new Congress that have taken their terms of office. And I'm curious what you think they need to know to make civil space, and I'll use your description, real estate, a successful place to operate going forward.
Well, I'm confident the new administration's gotten very good initial grounding and initial sketching of these key pivotal issues. For the United States, how are we going to deal with space traffic management? Again, with so many more entrants coming into the space arena, the old approach of the Defense Department, specifically the Air Force, taking charge of tracking things we care about in orbit and letting anybody know when something is getting too close. There was a lot of military usage of space and a small bit of civilian usage. So it made good sense for the Air Force to take that charge and just help the civilian users on the side. That's flipping the other way around now. The bulk of the activity is moving towards civil, and the growth rate is projected to be substantially on the civil side. So the Air Force is not in the business of providing customer service to civilian entities, nor should it be. So where are we going to move that function to, and where are we going to establish genuinely adequate technical capacity and policy guidance to make sure that that works successfully? There's been a debate over many, many years whether it should go to Federal Aviation Administration or the Department of Commerce. You can make an argument for or against either one of those, and you'll have it, some things easier and some things harder, depending which of those roads you go down. But what I would say, and I'm confident the new administration is hearing this message loud and clear, is what's important now is that we stop dithering about which, and pick one and make it work. That's true on space traffic management. I think it's true on, again, in the United States, it's true on the spectrum matter. The responsibilities for spectrum allocation and management are scattered across several different pieces of the executive branch in our country. So there's some mismatch and left-hand, right-hand problems that have complicated the situation. It's time to get that in hand. I mean, any of the ubiquitous internet constellations, at least one of which is already in the process of launching significant batches of satellites. The consequences of saturating those bits of real estate with 5G commercial cell signals is pretty significant on the GPS system. It's very significant on our weather satellite system because they're living in that same real estate, and it's not hard to swamp these signals. One of the most important measurements we make from orbit that is vital to weather forecasting is a very, very, very weak, low signal to noise microwave measurement, be readily swamped by intense 5G radiation in that same band. And then, so I think that's really the key thing for the new regime to get out in front of right away is get the table set more clearly, get some of these ambiguous issues of traffic management, spectrum management clarified so everyone knows what they've got to deal with and how to move forward to advance their mission or advance their business.
Well, their to-do list is certainly not short. And
No.
There's an awful lot of activity that they've all got to weigh in on. But I am curious, as you look to the new year that we're in 2021, what's the civil space mission that you're most looking forward to seeing?
Well, planetary geology kind of person that I am, I'm just thrilled to look at the veritable armada of missions that's set to head off towards Mars. And 2021, we'll just see their departure, won't see the arrivals or the landings or, fingers crossed, the first flight of a helicopter on Mars. But there are just some fabulously fun, daring, challenging mission objectives that the different satellites in that armada are going to undertake. So I'll be watching that with bated breath and following them all the way on the transit out and as they arrive. And of course, I'm officially a member of Team Hubble, having been on the shuttle mission that put the Hubble Space Telescope in orbit. See that just over my shoulder there behind me. It's been a long road from Hubble to the James Webb Space Telescope, but that critter now exists and is pretty well past all of its testing and about ready to get folded up and buttoned up and put on top of a booster and sent out to the Lagrange point. I'm not up to speed fully on the science, all of the science that James Webb will be able to do. But the first scientific satellite to operate, really complex scientific satellite to operate at the Lagrange point, it's super cold. You can get on those detectors, peering further into the infrared, and just the technical challenge of making all of those mirrors deploy into perfectly shaped concave array and the sun shield all unfold and protect it all. That's just spectacular marvel of automation and engineering that I'm sure everyone who knows anything about it will be on pins and needles come arrival and deploy day for James Webb.
Exactly, and there's a lot to look forward to there. Dr. Sullivan, thank you for your time and expertise and sharing it with us today. All of us at Space Foundation are grateful for the work and public service that you have given to all of us and what you continue to do to educate people on space, our environment, earth science, and so much more. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Rich. Have a great day.
Thank you. We'll be back in a moment with more shared perspectives for our State of Space 2021 program. Joining us now is Dr. Dave Kaufman, Senior Vice President, Ball Corporation, and President of Ball Aerospace. Dr. Kaufman's been with Ball for more than 20 years, where his high-level, mission-focused approach and expertise in the national security space arena have given him a broad perspective on aerospace and defense. As President of Ball Aerospace, he nurtures the Ball culture through his understanding of the business, passion for customer mission success, and respect for the Ball team. We're fortunate to have him join us today and for Ball's sponsorship of this year's State of Space program. Dr. Kaufman, thank you for joining us.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, Rich.
From your perspective and experience as a space industry leader, how do you and Ball see the state of space in 2021?
Well, it's pretty hard to look around the space industry and not be excited. And I think we're seeing a recognition that space is critical to so much of our lives, and as a result, we're getting an influx of interest and innovation and investment and new talent. Most of our major operations are here in Colorado, and we're just fortunate to be part of a vibrant space community, and we're just seeing growth all over in all kinds of missions. The lower cost of launches is really improving the accessibility of space, and we see space systems contributing to so much of our lives, making our lives better. We see forest fire monitoring and weather forecasting, air quality alerts, and moving into resource management, so kind of world problems of water scarcity and urban expansion. And so the missions are super exciting, and the technologies that go with that are just as exciting. So we have projects going on with kind of first of its kind sensors, and we're really able to engage our next generation in exciting new projects. And I think with government, as space has become more important, we're seeing government and industry partner as never before. We're really challenging the way things are done. The government is looking for faster acquisitions, new architectures, and they're really looking to industry for ideas, and we really feel that. The government's looking for innovation from all types of companies, from large and small, and they're looking at new missions that are particularly interesting to us, of resilience and special sensors that allow kind of unprecedented global insight. And so from where I sit, having a 20-something year career, I've never seen anything like it. And space is just a great industry to be in, just so fascinating. And I love that we get to be part of these new solutions and things that are so impactful.
You talked about government as a partner and how exciting times are right now in the space community. We have a new administration and a new Congress that have already begun their terms of office. What do you think they need to know about the space industry for it to continue to be successful in 2021 and going forward?
Well, I think first of all that they need to know that we're patriots. So we're in it to contribute to the nation, and so when I talked about partnership, I really meant they were looking for our ideas, and we see architecture studies and really hand-to-hand analysis, hand-in-hand analysis going on. that help shape the future. So that's the first thing. I think they also need to know that as they're looking to buy American and looking for economic recovery, this is a terrific industry. We provide STEM jobs and really interesting work for people, as well as technological advancement for the country. Another priority for the new administration has been climate, and so space is ready to perform there as well. We have high performance sensors and all kinds of different technologies that can be employed to monitor the Earth and look for resource scarcity and how things are changing, as well as environmental justice. As we see climate change affecting people, we can look for migration and for urban expansion, for agriculture effects. So we really think we have something to contribute to the national policy. And I think what's required to make that possible is really continued stable investment, predictability. We of course invest our own money, and we're looking to the government to plot their course and lay out their plans so that we can make our own plans to support them. So I think stability would be something that we'd be looking for. I think as far as the specific contributions we can make, I'm of course most familiar with what we're doing here at Ball Aerospace, and I'm just so fortunate to be able to see new technologies and the contributions they can make to keeping warfighters safe, to monitoring the health of the planet, to saving lives in improved weather forecasts and evacuation notices for hurricanes and things like that. And then let us not forget unlocking the secrets of the universe. So I've talked an awful lot about monitoring the Earth, but there's a big universe out there, and so those are things that I think this administration is going to be interested in, and I think the industry and Ball in particular are ready to respond. I think the partnership, wraps it all together, and I think keeping an open dialogue with us, with industry, listening to us, allowing us to listen to them, I think that's how we get there. So there's kind of a few ideas, and that partnership piece is really, I think, the key.
You talked about stability there, as well as the need for partnerships, as well as climate change and security for the warfighter, as well as the homeland and emergency response. I'm curious, though, with so many budget priorities, what areas do you think need the most attention and investment for the space industry to continue to succeed and thrive in 2021?
Well, I think, coming from the defense and intel world, I've heard an awful lot from General Raymond, from General Thompson, talking about space as a contested environment. And I think that is something that is well known, progressing, and we're in this situation where you have thousands of new satellites in orbit. We need to know what's going on. We need to know what's moving around, where things are, to be able to plan our systems, to continue the capabilities that really are critical to daily life. And so I think space domain awareness is probably an area of high interest and could really use investment to make sure that we continue to have space as a safe place to operate for everybody. I think the second thing I already mentioned was climate change and the role of space and sustainability, observing the Earth and monitoring changes, understanding, how humans are affecting the Earth is very important. Again, I'm most familiar with what we see at Ball, but we're doing missions that are observing and protecting the land, monitoring the climate, air quality, disasters. And so, I think those stable investment. And I think lastly, and maybe that's for all of us, including government, is I think we need to focus on diversity in our workforce. To accomplish all that we've set out to do and all that the nation relies on us for, we need the best creativity, the highest performing teams, the best solutions. And the way we get there is that we have everyone available to us and enable them to bring their best. And to me, that's what diversity inclusion means. And so aerospace historically has not been known to be strong in diversity. And, we need to make our industry a place where all voices are heard, all backgrounds are celebrated, and we can really achieve the creativity that comes from diverse teams. So I think, that will be involved in government investment, but I really think it is the whole industry pulling together to make sure that we have an attractive industry for all kinds of people to be interested in STEM careers, come out and be able to contribute to these missions. And so there's not really shortage of talent, but I think we need to attract that talent, recruit it, and bring those people in to help us achieve. You mentioned culture in the introduction. That's going to be what we try to bring forward as we're trying to attract the next generation and achieve the diversity that we need to really succeed moving forward. And so that culture and helping everybody be part of it is where I'm going to be focused.
So you detail a lot there for the agenda for 2021. What do you think will be your company's biggest achievement in 2021?
Okay. Well, so we've been really fortunate to be part of some incredible missions and delivered some great capabilities that are upcoming. And I think first in line would be our part of the James Webb Space Telescope. This is something that's been coming for decades. We delivered the optical system. We've been helping with integration, and there's just so many people at our company are looking forward to that mission. And I think the whole industry is pulling together to make that possible. So that's one. We also are a big part of the Landsat 9 mission, and we're starting our integration of our imaging X-ray polarimetry explorer, the IXPE mission for NASA. And so those are a few things I can mention. There's a few that I can't celebrate publicly, but I think those are kind of individual events. But really, the whole is what we're excited about. I like to tell our employees that they can change the world from their desk, or their lab, or their bench in Colorado, or in Ohio, or in Maryland, or New Mexico. And it's true. I grew up in this industry, and I fell in love with the technology, but the missions are what keeps everybody going. And I look around at what we're able to do and the missions we're able to contribute to, and we all have just such a sense of pride of what we've been able to do. And so I think the missions that our customers are able to deliver are where we're really pleased. We've been, over the last several years, we've been growing into new roles, and so that gets us a little bit closer to the mission, and I think that makes it easier to look around our team and see an awful lot of smiles when mission product is available to our customers. I think if we're looking at accomplishments, looking back to 2020, I think all of us accomplished a lot, making it through kind of such a tough situation, and going into 2021. We're really focused on thriving in the new reality that we find ourselves in. things are different. They're going to be different. And we really asked a lot of our team, and they delivered. And so in 2021, I think we're going to try to capture what's been good about 2020 and really thrive. We were able to hire almost 1,000 new employees last year. Some of them have never even met their teams in person. And so going forward, we want to bring those people into Ball, make them part of our culture, and we're still on a strong hiring pace. And so, that growth has been super exciting. And I think as a company, maybe that's something that I'm proud of, is that we've been able to grow our company. We're contributing to the most important missions in the space community, and it's just been a phenomenal time over the last several years, especially.
That is a lot to be proud of. Thank you, Dave, for joining us today and sharing your thoughts. You and Ball have a lot to contribute to today's unfolding space renaissance, and we look forward to seeing even more achievements in the weeks and months to come. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate your support for today's program. Thank you.
Hey, thanks very much, Rich. Glad to be part of it. Looking forward to the comments, the other panelists, and I think like we started out, space is an exciting business to be in right now, and I'm excited for the new people coming into it. We all have a responsibility to inspire them and bring them into something even better than we joined.
That we do. Dave, thank you. And we'll be back in a moment with more for our State of Space 2021 program. We're joined now by General David Thompson, Vice Chief of Space Operations for the United States Space Force. As Vice Chief, he's responsible for assisting the Chief of Space Operations in organizing, training, and equipping space forces in the United States and overseas by integrating space policy and guidance and coordinating space-related activities for the Space Force and the Department of the Air Force. General Thompson, thank you for joining Space Foundation and our State of Space 2021 program today.
Rich, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
General, from your perspective and experience as Vice Chief for Space Force and as a national security leader, what is the state of space in 2021?
Well, for years we've been using the tagline that space is congested, contested, and competitive. And I would say that probably more so than any time in the past, that tagline absolutely applies here. If you think about the congested part of space, in 2020 alone, there were over 110 space launches, nearly 1,000 new space objects, satellites deployed into the space domain. We're now talking about rapidly approaching 3,000 active satellites in orbit. And if you look at plans of companies and nations, we're very quickly going to go over probably into the tens of thousands of satellites in the near future. And so all that is good in terms of economic activity. It's great in terms of the potential benefits that it would provide to nations and individuals and economic activity of managing that activity, managing it physically in terms of the fear of collision, managing the services and the spectrum and the rights. And so it's becoming increasingly congested even more so in the past. The second thing is it's certainly become more competitive, right? All that activity from an economic standpoint is again good, but the challenges that it provides in terms of competition among companies, but also increasingly the services available to potential adversaries or those who might wish to do us harm also presents an issue for us in terms of the competition in the domain. And then, of course, the greatest concern for us on the national security side is the contested aspect of the domain. Just this last year, Russia tested a new offensive space capability in orbit. They launched it into an orbit that was threatening to one of our space systems. They've conducted a weapons test. Others are building space capabilities, offensive weapons. China continues on that path. So in 2020, we are absolutely still in an area of congested, contested, and competitive, and that is only going to increase in the future and will require additional focus and attention for all of us.
Sir, if I may, I want to pull on that thread of congested and competitive that you've offered there. What roles do you see civil space agencies and commercial industry members playing in support of the national security and space mission that the Space Force has?
So partnerships are increasingly important, not just to the success of the Space Force itself, but for the nation, for our economic viability, for our effective exploitation for commercial purposes and exploratory purposes. On the civil side, we have had and enjoyed tremendous partnerships for years, going back decades with NASA in terms of the services capabilities we need, launch and data relay. We've done a lot of technology work, as well as policy and other work with NASA. That partnership has to increase with the increasing congestion and competition in the domain. We have a growing partnership with the Department of Commerce, not only in terms of their ability to accept the space traffic management mission. That's a regulatory mission that we're not suited or really chartered to perform. And so we that partnership, both in terms of that regulatory activity, but also helping them to spur on economic activity to the benefit of our of the nation from a prosperity perspective is important. And then our longstanding relationship with the FAA to facilitate commercial launch. On the commercial side, where civil is a long enduring partnership that we need to grow, really we need to develop some new partnerships with the commercial market, especially new space where innovation and money is flowing in to develop new capabilities, to use space in new and different ways, to develop new concepts of operations. Just like I think the commercial market did with smartphone technology a decade or more ago, we in the DoD need to recognize that innovation, that energy, understand where they're going, understand where we can ride on the coattails of commercial, so to speak, to take advantage of the services and capabilities they're going to provide, but also understand how we can adapt some of that commercial investment in technology and ideas to national security purposes. And then the last part of the partnership, certainly civil and commercial will be very important, but we can't forget about our allied and partner nations. We're growing partnerships there. Of course, our long-standing partnership with the Five Eyes partners, growing with Japan and with France and Germany are important, but we're really expanding partnerships into new areas and with new nations. Our first bilateral engagement as a U.S. Space Force occurred with the country of Brazil, and late last year we finished a South American space security conference. And so we have found that those nations are interested in partnering with us as a nation, with us as a Space Force, and our common interest really is the stability and the security of the domain so that it's available for economic purposes, for exploratory and research purposes, and for security of the nations.
So you've got a year under your belt with the Space Force and operations. I'm curious if you can share with us, what are the areas of focus and priorities for this new year?
Absolutely, Rich. So year one was very much about inventing the Space Force, right? Creating a brand new military service. We had some great raw materials in Air Force Space Command and parts of 23 other organizations inside of the U.S. Air Force that helped us to create and invent the force. The focus for year two is really going to be on integration. We need to ensure we're tied in very effectively with the rest of the Department of Defense. First and foremost, we need to tie in with the other services and with the combatant commands. Our job is to provide capabilities for soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. It's to provide ISR and indications and warning and communications, not just for them, but for our national leaders. We provide those vital capabilities like GPS, not just for military forces, but for public safety and commercial purposes. All of that, we have to ensure we integrate effectively back into the force. Even though we've created a separate service, provide those capabilities tightly, not only to the services, but also into the combatant command. And certainly our largest partnership and need to integrate is with U.S. Space Command, the newest of the combatant commands. But the rest of the commands, European Command, Indo-Pacific Command, as I talked about, Southern Command and all the others, have needs, unique needs for space capabilities, different ways they use the services we provide. So we need to integrate with all of them and ensure, first and foremost, we're providing those capabilities to them effectively, and where they have to help us protect those capabilities in the face of threats. So it's really that integration challenge, designing our forces, integrating our forces, preparing our forces, and making sure they operate effectively inside the combat commands with the rest of the joint force is going to be the focus of General Raymond's priorities for the second year of the Space Force.
The integration challenge anywhere is always a difficult one, but I'm curious, if you have to forecast, what do you think will be Space Force's biggest achievement in 2021?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Let me say first and foremost, our biggest achievement or our biggest success has to be the continued provision of those capabilities that we provide today. You know, in spite of the fact that we created a brand new service here in 2020, while we did that, we had to continue to provide those, operate those space systems and capabilities as a new service that we had in the past. Providing GPS, as we discussed, providing missile warning, providing global communications, maintaining domain awareness, all those things that we do. If in fact we failed in any of those areas and achieved greatly in any other area, we would be a failure. So I'll say, first and foremost, our number one achievement absolutely has to be to continue to operate those systems, provide those capabilities that we do every single day. Having said that, I think probably I'm going to say the greatest achievement I think we will have in 2021 is actually to complete the work of really establishing this brand new service. Those who know the Space Force Act, the 2020 NDAA that created the Space Force, also know that Congress gave us 18 months to complete this work. 18 months to complete the design of the entire force, to transfer in the capabilities and the functions and the missions, to transfer in people, to ensure it's effectively resourced. I think when we look back on 2021, by the 18-month point, we will have completed the design of the service. We stood up Space Operations Command last year. We're in the final stages of the design of Space Systems Command and Training and Readiness Command. We've established the parameters for two vital centers, a National Space Intelligence Center and a Warfighting and Analysis Center, that are critical to addressing threats in the domain. All of that work will be done by the 18-month point. And looking back and having done that in the midst of what happened last year with COVID, in the midst of continuing to operate every single day, I think that's going to be our greatest achievement. When you look back to 1947 and what the U.S. Air Force did and how long it took to establish itself, basically about a 3-year process, the U.S. Air Force was almost turnkey ready on day one. The U.S. Space Force was not. To be able to have really created this service in 18 months, I think, will be the achievement that will be remembered for decades to come.
That's really impressive. And you and General Raymond and all the Guardians there are to be commended for what you guys are doing in the truncated time that Congress and others have given to you. General, thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. We're really grateful for the service that you and all the Guardians offer at Space Force and for doing what you can to make this country and others safe. And we look forward to future conversations with you and, of course, seeing you at Symposium in August of this year. Thank you, General.
You're welcome. On behalf of General Raymond and all of the Guardians, it remains a privilege to serve. And thanks to you and the Space Foundation for the vital role that you play in the security of the nation and the effective use of the domain.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day. We're now joined by Chris Quilty, the founder and managing partner of Quilty Analytics. Prior to establishing Quilty Analytics in 2016, Chris served as a sell-side research analyst with Raymond James for 20 years, publishing hundreds of company-specific macro, sector, and thematic research reports on the industrial, defense, space, wireless, and communications industries. Chris is widely acknowledged as a thought leader in both the satellite and space ecosystems. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Chris, from your perspective and experience as someone who's watched and assessed the growth of the satellite and space sectors for Wall Street and other financial leaders, what is the state of space in 2021?
I would say that the state of the industry is strong. In fact, I would argue that the current state of the industry is probably seeing some of the best fundamentals we've seen in decades, and that's due to a confluence of factors. Number one, I'd mentioned the regulatory environment has become more favorable. Number two, favorable technology trends, and that's everything from the launch industry to phased array antennas, digital payloads, the development of small sats, and a number of other important technologies that are driving the growth and the cost basis of the industry. And third, there's been a dramatic improvement in the funding environment for space companies, particularly from the venture capital industry, which historically shied away from the industry. If you look at the last 5 years, we've seen literally hundreds of companies funded as compared to less than 70 in the decade that ran from 2000 to 2010. And notably, and equally as important, we're seeing favorable trends in successful exits for companies, which is important for any investor, as we're seeing multiple private equity companies coming into the industry looking to do roll-ups, and even more recently, the emergence of special purpose acquisition companies, or SPACs, which are providing a new path to the public markets. So the bottom line is the industry is no longer solely dependent on the government as its sole source of survival and growth. It's benefiting from increased commercial demand, and we're seeing the emergence of new downstream markets and applications, everything from consumer broadband to weather satellite and space tourism, all of which contribute to the diversity and stability of the overall industry landscape.
So what are the core metrics we should be watching for to assess the strength and sustainability of this marketplace?
Well, intuitively, it starts with the launch market. These are questions like, what are the total number of launches, the success rate, the diversity of launch vehicles and launch sites. A successful 2021 effort sets the growth and SLS. Just kidding. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention two big NASA events that we should expect this year. The launch of the James Webb Space Telescope, and we should hopefully see Boeing Starliner demo. And then if I switch to the commercial achievements, this should be the year that Starlink enters service on a more than a regional or test basis as they continue to launch new satellites. And finally, one other commercial event I'm going to call out is Telesat's LEO constellation. After years of delay, we'll either get a definitive decision by the company to move forward, or you can stick a knife in it.
Thank you, Chris, for your time and expertise with us today.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate that. As someone who's been actively involved with this market, your perspective means a lot here, and appreciate your thoughts. We'll be back in a moment for more shared perspectives on State of Space 2021. We're now joined by Dr. Tidiane Ouattara, space science expert leading the development and implementation of African space policy and strategy, as well as the African Outer Space Program. He also serves as the manager and coordinator of the Global Monitoring for Environment and Security in Africa program with the African Union Commission. Dr. Ouattara has tremendous experience in international relations and business development, research and development, strategic policy development, and program management issues related to the environment, natural resources, and sciences and technology. He joins us today from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Dr. Ouattara, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rich. It is a pleasure and an honor.
Sir, from your perspective and experience as someone who has worked with multiple countries, organizations, and partners on space issues in Africa, what is the state of space in 2021 in Africa?
Thank you very much, Rich. Before all, I would like to thank the Space Foundation and the organizers for inviting us to witness and to share with the global audience on the state of the space in Africa in 2021. I would like to thank you on behalf of the African Union Commission, which is the intergovernmental commission, intergovernmental organization representing the African 55 countries. Therefore, whatever we do it on behalf of the 55 countries. I would like to update you today on what is going on space matters in Africa. I'd like to start by the policy and strategy. At the policy and strategy level, I'd like to inform you that since 2016, we have an African space policy and strategy, which is leading all continental commitment and engagements and actions on space matters. The African space policy is also complemented by regional policies and space policies and strategy. I'd like to talk about SADC policy, space policy. SADC is Southern African Development Community space policy. We also have ECOWAS policy, space policy, which is under development, which is the Economic Commission for Western Africa. I would like to say that at the national level also, we have some national space policies, South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, etc. At the governance level, I'd like to say that we have a very good news. The African Space Agency has been created. The statute has been adopted by the head of state and government of the 55 countries, and Egypt has been chosen as the hosting country. Secondly, at the regional level, you have some regional economic organizations being involved in the space matters, which is a very good thing. Over the last decade, things have been changing in Africa. I'd like also to talk about the national space agencies and space institutions. They are not numerous, but we are seeing growing the number of national space institutions and policies. At the programmatic level, in 2021, we can say that over the last decade, in terms of capacity development, we've seen a lot of infrastructures coming to Africa. The Earth observation, for example, the well-known one, is the infrastructures are increasing. You have more than 100 data receiving stations. You also have the, I would say, at the satellite level, we'll say that 11 countries have launched in 2019, I would say 42 satellites. And this number is increasing because we have in the pipeline other additional 80 satellites to be launched by 20 countries in 2024, which is something we are looking with pleasure. We'll say at the training level, the Africans are being trained, even if the critical mass is, is to be reached. We have to train more people because space is relatively new in Africa. And the African population being young, it is a huge opportunity to train more and more Africans and to attract young people and maintain them in the space carrier arena. I would say at the resources mobilization, we've seen the investment in space in Africa. According to Space in Africa, the review, they are quoting $7 billion investment in 2019 for space. And this amount will reach 10 billions by 2024. Therefore, Africa is a huge opportunity, and we are seeing startups coming, and the startups attracted $200 million US dollars in 2019. Just to say that Africa, in terms of space, the state of space is going very well. We are taking off. There are huge opportunities, and we are counting on the collaboration to develop the indigenous capacity and to also develop the private sector, because the innovation resides in the private sector and the academia. Thank you very much.
Sir, you mentioned Egypt being the host country for the African Space Agency, and that so many of those countries, 55 countries, as you said, have signed on to being a part of that. I'm curious as to who are the specific countries and companies that you see leading the way in Africa that deserve more of the world's attention, and what are their drivers for that growth and development?
Thank you very much, Rich. I would say the African Union Commission is made up of 55 countries. And the African Space Agency, being an organ of the African Union Commission, all the 55 countries are members of the African Space Agency. Secondly, in Africa, we have three types of countries. You have the pioneers in the space arena: South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, Algeria, and Morocco to some extent. And you have what we call the newcomers. The newcomers, you have, for example, Ethiopia, Gabon with their space agency, Ghana, Kenya, etc. But the big chunk of the countries are in the third category. They are the users of space. They do not have national space policies or national space agencies or institutions, but all African countries are using hugely the space products and services. What is really now leading the African space market or the African space industry? It is, first of all, the African socio-economic development. It is clear that the African decision makers with the African space policy and strategy indicated clearly that space is in the heart of the African development through the Agenda 2063. The African Union Commission Agenda 2063 is where you have the priorities for the African socio-economic development for the upcoming 40 years. And one of the flagship programs for the implementation of this Agenda 2063 is the African Outer Space Program. Therefore, space guiding, supporting the socio-economic developments is leading us here. In terms of companies, as I said previously, we are taking off. The private sector, African indigenous private sectors, they are very weak and they are a few. Who are guiding currently? They are, I would say, foreign private companies. They may have some branches in Africa, but we need to develop the African capacity at that level. Again, the universities are really being very well involved. You can see that we have, I would say, regional institutions for training, research, and development, as well as national institutions. Altogether, I would say the space industry in Africa is not really led by a specific country or a specific company.
So what should the world know about Africa's future in space?
Fantastic question. The Africa future of space is something that will happen without any doubt. Why? Because Africa doesn't want to repeat the same journey as other countries. We are giving always the example of the mobiles, the cell phones. You know, the ground infrastructures in Africa are less than the mobiles. The mobiles entered in any single small villages in Africa. In what we did, we didn't follow the ground infrastructure as other countries. We just took from where they are, meaning using the mobile phone. Space being critical in socio-economic development, I would say job creation, I would say environmental protection, I would say natural resources management, I would say marine and coastal areas protection and surveillance. I would say security matters. All these activities with the development of the space technologies and science, Africa would like to take advantage of that. Then the future of Africa, as we used to say, reside in space. This is why we used to say that Africa is the new El Dorado for space business. All is to be done from the scratch. And we have together to build together the African capacity to allow Africa to be among the nations, the space nations.
That's an incredibly inspiring vision that you've got there. And building on that, I want to challenge you with one last question here. What do you think will be the biggest achievement for Africa in space in 2021?
In 2021, for us, making the African Space Agency operational will be one of the biggest achievements, because the African Space Agency has two mandates. One, it is to increase collaboration among African nations, be those who have capacities in space, be those who need space but don't have capacity. Therefore, since the mandate of the African Union Commission is to work as a secretariat of the African Union for an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, African Space Agency will make sure that, as described in the African Space Policy, space is peacefully used for African socio-economic development. Therefore, the main governance for the African Outer Space Program implementation, being the African Space Agency, we believe that the biggest achievement will be in 2021 to see the African Space Agency becoming operational.
That is something we at Space Foundation are very excited to see and see how that story unfolds, because I think it is one of incredible ambition, but it's even bigger than that. It's a bigger inspiration as to how countries can work together for the greater good back here on Earth. Dr. Ouattara, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing the growth and opportunity you described for us this year and in the days ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rich. Thanks to the Space Foundation, and we are expecting more collaboration, and we are counting on all to make this space a reality in Africa. Thank you very much.
And we look forward to doing that with you as well. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Thank you to all of our presenters for sharing their words and insights in this year's State of Space program. And thanks again to Ball Aerospace for the support of today's program. We could not have done it without you. If you've enjoyed today's program and want more like it, check out Space Foundation's new digital platform, Symposium 365, where we bring you insights from newsmakers, industry leaders, issue briefs, and more. It's the same great content you've come to expect from our annual Space Symposium, but this time it's all year round and in hand, wherever you are, whenever you want it. Just go to spacesymposium365.org for more details. And don't forget our social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn for daily content as well. At Space Foundation, we're advocating for innovation for bettering life on Earth. Thank you for joining us.